Funding for the art show was made possible by Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, the Virginia W. Kettering Foundation, proud supporter of the arts in our community, and viewers like you. Thank you.
In this edition of the Art Show, find out why this painter spends so much time on Craigslist. Hollywood visits the Decorative Arts Center in Lancaster, Ohio. An ordinary aluminum can becomes an eye-catching sculpture. And visit one of the largest art collections in America. It's all ahead on this edition of The Art Show. Hello, I'm Rodney Veal, and welcome to the third season of The Art Show, where each week we showcase local, regional, and national artists and arts organizations. Daniel Brown has a thing for burnouts, horsepower, and loud exhaust. He's never not loved cars. It seemed ideal to combine his love of art and his love of cars, until he realized how hard it was for an automotive painter to get respect.
This is a 1947 Plymouth Special Deluxe four-door sedan, one of Chrysler Corporation's post-war models. Its three-speed manual transmission was also known as 3 on the tree. The color-changing speedometer feature was called Safety Signal, and the satin blue model features suicide doors and no interior. Who are we kidding? The car is pretty crappy by most people's standards. This is Daniel Brown. He owns the crappy car and is restoring it to its former glory. This sedan sets the stage for Daniel's work as an automotive artist.
I don't know that people really think of automotive art as a genre in art. Typically, it's going to be someone that paints a car, and usually they're like classics or something that's nice, and they're trying to hold it to a high standard. But automotive art, it's one of those things that's kind of painful for me to think about and talk about. I think there's a difference being an automotive artist as opposed to landscape painter or portrait painter. You're kind of not held to the same standard. Those are accepted images, subject matter to work with, but painting a car is not art. All of a sudden you put yourself in this category of, I'm no longer making art, I'm just making some sort of craft. I personally don't have a problem with it. I have a problem trying to talk about it or tell people why I do it. They think that I'm like this super big car person, which I like cars. But for me, it's not about the image. I'm much more comfortable talking about the paint aspect of it. My technique started from my figure drawing. I liked the looseness of line. I like the quick, expressive brushstroke. I don't draw things out and fill them in. I just start to paint, and I'm looking for value as opposed to outside line. So it gives it more of that impressionistic look, which has been really nice because there aren't a lot of other automotive artists doing that kind of looser style. Most automotive art is this very technical rendered thing that is very photorealistic, it's very specific, and it's very correct. I don't focus on getting the edges right or the wheels correct. There's a lot of stuff that gets implied because of that looseness. It's a different approach, and it's not something that a lot of people do when relating to cars, and so it kind of sets me apart in that respect. When I started doing automotive art, I just did it because I wanted to paint a picture of my car, and then I had this idea of I could paint other people's cars and they could probably buy them, and maybe this could be a business. I didn't realize that people already had thought of that, obviously, and were doing it. And I discovered that there are automotive art societies and there's certain shows for automotive art, and I feel a little bit of guilt sometimes because of that, because I know other artists struggle to get their artwork out, and then I have this show that has an art tent set up. I just bring my artwork and I display it, and they put me in front of people that have lots of money, and they like to spend stuff on whatever they can get, I guess. I realize that it's superficial and I realize that it's just a simple image. But the thing that's nice about just painting a car is that it's not intimidating like a lot of art is for normal people. At shows that I'll be at, they'll come up and they don't normally set foot in a gallery. They'll come and talk to me about my artwork. They don't normally question, why are you painting this car? Of course you'd paint a car like this because they're cool and I like them too. I've always been into Firebirds, and I'm searching Craigslist for Firebirds, and I found this 78 or 9 Firebird. And it had the hood up, and it had this big fat guy with his shirt off drinking a beer next to it. And I thought it was so funny, one, just because like the image, and two, because they were selling their car, and they decided to use that as, the selling point, apparently. I was like, I just got to paint that. I painted it, and then I took it to a show in Detroit. And everybody was like, that looks like my brother, or my uncle, or my next door neighbor. Everybody could relate to it. And then I started thinking, well, I'll start looking for more with that kind of idea. And I started seeing the human aspect to these things. Like, they really related to us. It was a picture of a car, but it was more a picture of society. This is car art, but this is more than that. It's not like about some dumb car. It's about just normal people, That's what I really liked about it. It's successful, and then a lot of people like the series. They get a kick out of it. But monetarily, I would not say that it's been the best series for me. Painting someone's car that they cherish and will spend any kind of dollar amount on is different than someone that's selling their car on Craigslist and posts a cell phone picture of, and I paint that. I mean, they're not pretty pictures. It doesn't sell well, but it makes me happy. I realize that it's not normal art, it's just a painting of a car. Why are you doing it? The car aspect is sort of secondary. It's really not about that, It's about that moment where I lose myself and I'm not even thinking about what's going on. I love the process of painting and getting out there and working. When I don't care about the image or trying to get it to capture just right, then I can relax and focus on the paint more. And the Craigslist stuff, ironically then, is more about the image and are typically painted a little tighter, and it's not quite as fun to paint. But then the reaction that I get because of what the image is, I want people to look at it and love it for how it's painted more than just the fact that it's a car.
See more pictures of Daniel Brown's influences on his webpage. Click on the art show at thinktv.org for the link. Did you miss an episode of The Art Show? No problem. You can watch it on demand at thinktv.org. You'll find all of the previous episodes, as well as current episodes and links to the artists we feature. Edith Head is one of the most recognizable names in film fashion history. During her 60-year career, she worked on more than 1,000 films and garnered 35 Academy Award nominations, and won 8 of them. She spent 43 years at Paramount Pictures, where she designed many of the iconic costumes worn by some of Hollywood's biggest actresses, such as Barbara Stanwyck and Ginger Rogers. In this segment, we'll visit her historic costume collection that was on view at the Decorative Arts Center in Lancaster, Ohio.
I grew up in Lancaster in the 40s, and I loved the movies. Went every Saturday. And the names I remember are Wally Westmoreland, who did the makeup, and costume design was always Edith Head. She was at Paramount for 34 years, which is unprecedented, and it's definitely not just a show of evening gowns, but of all of the genres of the films that she worked on. And her other interests, she was one of the first women to brand herself, so we talk about her creating dress patterns and the books she wrote, in addition to the costumes that she designed. Her name, I think, was the most well-known of all of the costume designers in Hollywood. And Her name's, she's been dead since 1981, and her name still comes up. I think in the Incredibles she's referred to.
Keep moving, fellas, especially in front of you. Slower, slower. Stop it, stupid.
The conservative aspect of her clothes, the classic timelessness, defines her. A movie could be kept for release for a couple of months, sometimes a year, even 2 years after it was made, before it was released. So she strictly avoided any fads in clothing, because when the movie was released, it would look dated. One of the most recognizable ones would be the wedding dress. It's very elaborate and in remarkable condition for its age. And it reminds me that all of these costumes in this exhibition were once in the rental stock of Paramount Pictures. Until 2006, anyone could go in and rent these costumes. These clothes haven't traveled except for one exhibition in El Paso, Texas, and that was a town that had a film festival. And for their 100th anniversary, they reached out to Paramount for an Edith Head collection. And so all of these costumes were restored. Some of them had been very badly damaged, but they've been restored beautifully. So they were on exhibition there in 2012 and went back to Paramount. And when our application was approved, they're here, and this is just the second time that they've ever left Hollywood. We have a little bit of everything from Bing Crosby's jacket and Martha Ray's cape when she was a matador in a movie for something like 30 seconds. And Bob Hope's circus costume. There's some very sophisticated evening dresses. There's a negligee. And there are some performance costumes like the Jane Russell outfit and a Betty Hutton outfit that's sequins that were used in performance scenes in the movie. Her personal style, and this was her career persona, was conservative suits, usually gray. The schoolmarm, sort of old-fashioned schoolmarm bangs and hair she adopted in 1938 when she became chief designer at Paramount. She created this look. It was the bangs, the chignon, and the glasses. The blue lenses in her glasses, she said, enabled her to see what the colors would look like in black and white film. And as soon as they started making more color pictures, she switched to gray. The biggest secret of her success was she studied the scripts. She knew exactly what the storyline was, and she wanted the costumes to advance the storyline. She also asked the artists about their preferences. Some of them wouldn't wear prints. Some of them had what they considered figure flaws, which we never noticed because Edith was such a genius at covering them up. For instance, she said Betty Davis had a thick neck and she had a very big bust, which was suffering from the effects of gravity. And Betty wouldn't wear an underwire bra because she thought they caused cancer. So she was a genius. She said, except for Grace Kelly, every actress had something that needed disguised. Seeing them in the movies is one thing, and we even have clips from the movies here. But to see the fabrics and the incredible handwork, the beading and the soutaching, it just defies description, and it's not something you see in the mall or in a department store anywhere. This is the only place, and these are incredible works of art. They truly are.
The Decorative Arts Center is just southeast of Columbus and Lancaster and has free admission. The center provides exhibitions, public programs, art classes, and workshops for all ages. Click on the art show at thinktv.org for details. We receive quite a few emails each week, so keep contacting us with your story ideas. Let us know what sets you apart from other artists. Send an email to theartshow@thinktv.org. Include contact information and links to performances or art samples online. Artist Noah Daletta spends his days pushing dense and geometric shapes into aluminum cans. And the result is something unlike you've ever seen before. We feature the Irony in Aluminum project, which is all about taking the ordinary and transforming it into the astonishing.
It's the art of possibility. It's the idea that something we're all familiar with can be expressed in a way that's unfamiliar, in a way that's significant. People come up with their own theories. They imagine a machine that does it, or a robot, or some kind of elaborate press, or a vacuum system. And I always get a kick out of it because it's really the most simple idea that gets overlooked. I call it Irony and Aluminum, which is, it's really just a description of the media, whereas previously I was painting, so I would say, this is oil on canvas. Irony and Aluminum just seemed like a fitting name, as well as a slight play on words, with aluminum being a metal and iron being a metal. One of the most common responses is people say they've never seen anything like this, but one of the ironies is that they have seen something like this. It's just in a way that they don't recognize. The irony that a normally destructive force, such as crushing, can actually be creative, that can be presented as art, that something familiar can be presented in a way that's unfamiliar. I was just out of boredom during a car trip to Orlando. I was in the back seat. I'd finished a Red Bull, had nothing to do. I didn't have an iPhone to mess around with, so I just started fiddling with this can that had been partially crushed. And I noticed that in a way the dents would allow certain shapes to form. They would allow themselves to be manipulated. At the time, I just made a mental note to return back to the idea at a later time. I applied some geometry, some artistic principles of repetition and shape and pattern. And it really started to grow. It really started to become something more than I thought it would. Red Bull has this art competition that they had been doing in different cities. It's called Art of Can. So I entered a sculpted Red Bull can, and it won the first prize in their contest. So that was really encouraging that other people were receptive to it, that it was something it was worth pursuing. But it wasn't until 2 years after that, I don't know what caused it, but just the idea popped in my head to use a blank can. And I'd always loved polished aluminum since I was a kid. Shiny metal was just something that was just intriguing to me. I would take my Matchbox cars and rub them on the cement so they would be shiny metal. I just thought that was the coolest thing. When I sanded down my first can, I was instantly brought back to that. It was just the finish itself was something that was just so beautiful to me. When I used a blank can to sculpt, the result was just amazing to me. I felt it brought it to the next level, into something that could really be presented as fine art. It was a turning point for me as an artist, just to kind of go with what I was feeling in a way that I hadn't ever had a chance to before. So just as an artist, just to get to that point was something that was very important to me. I built a machine that It's kind of a lathe where I install the can in the machine and it spins the can, and then I sand it while I squirt it with water, so it's a wet sanding process. It removes the printed layer off the can, and then I polish it, I empty it, and then I start sculpting. The main technique is using the tip of my thumbnail on the surface of the can to create a score, to push a dent a certain way, to create a ridge. The technique is an ambidextrous one. A lot of the movements you need to mirror both left and right. I've always been an ambidextrous person, so it's nice to have something that can really sink into on the right and left side. There is a physical limit to their creation. Because I use my thumbs, they went numb for like 2 days at one point because of overuse. I can't really produce more than 2 sculptures in a day without suffering nerve damage. If you came to my house, you'd be inundated by half-sculpted Red Bull cans. I keep them in storage so that I can refer back to many of them. I call it sketching. Many of the sketches are ones that need to be revisited. Many of them are ideas that need to be further developed. Many of them I just do just to keep my thumbs in shape. One of the best things about the sculptures is their tendency towards variety, which keeps it interesting.
If you pick up a can and try what Noah does, take a picture and send it to us at theartshow@thinktv.org. Finally, tonight, we visit the largest American art collection owned by a private institution. In one of its premier exhibits, the Parrish Art Museum, located at the East End of Long Island, New York, celebrates the life and art of American Impressionist painter William Merritt Chase.
I'm Alicia Longwell. I'm the Louis B. and Dorothy Coleman Chief Curator of Art and Education here at the Parrish Art Museum. Our new Herzog and Dimmeron design building is located in Watermill, New York, a hamlet just to the east of Southampton Village on Long Island's East End. This is the first time that we've had dedicated space to show our permanent collection and to have a dedicated gallery to the work of William Merritt Chase. The Parrish collection is really notable for its range of work from all periods, especially from the Shinnecock paintings when he was here, and is the largest collection in a public institution in America. William Merritt Chase had a long and rich relationship to the East End of Long Island. You might even say that he staked his claim to this landscape early on and that he saw more possibilities in it than the untutored eye. He once said that he could find pictorial gold in the dross of the Shinnecock Hills. It was in many ways a scrubby landscape, one that had been greatly overlooked by many other artists. He first came out to Eastern Long Island in 1881 to sketch en plein air. Chase adopted not so much what you might call the techniques of the French Impressionists, but certainly their ideas of coming out and painting modern life. In 1891, 2 civic-minded women in the Southampton area decided they'd like to start a plein air school of art. Chase was a very well-known teacher at the Art Students League. He was a renowned portrait painter, and he readily accepted their invitation to come out and in 1891 be the founding director of the Shinnecock Hills Summer School of Art. By the next summer, a house had been built for him, this beautiful Dutch colonial revival, shingle style that's become very famous and ubiquitous here on the East End, and his whole family came out. He taught here till 1902, and then the family continued to use the house in Shinnecock really up to Chase's death in 1916. The William Merritt Chase Archives at the Parrish Art Museum is a repository of documents, letters, and most especially 600 photographs that really document the artist's life. Many of the photographs were, we know, taken by Mrs. Chase. She was an amateur photographer. They give an extraordinary glimpse into what you might call a Gilded Age summer, but really more importantly into Chase's life and work. These photographs particularly are extremely important because many of the same scenes that Chase depicted are visible in the photographs. Chase is indelibly associated with the paintings that he did here in the Shinnecock Hills. Our own painting, 1895, the Bayberry Bush, is really emblematic of these, and he really did find pictorial gold in this scrubby landscape. I think one of the most interesting things about that painting is, of course, the presence of the house that they lived in, the three daughters. It is a complete look at the artist and his life, I think, having the domestic realm, the landscape realm. There is perhaps no better entry into the creative life of William Merritt Chase than this painting we see here, Alice in the Shinnecock Studio from around 1900. Alice Judene Chase, his oldest daughter, was often depicted by Chase in his paintings. Alice is really a surrogate for the viewer, inviting us into the rarefied atmosphere of the artist's studio. While the nominal subject of the painting is the studio, the true theme is painting itself. Here we see so many objects that become a self-portrait for the artist. The Shinnecock painting on the easel, the luminous glow of the bric-a-brac that he collected, his upended paintbrushes, the sketch of Velázquez in the upper left, and the light coming through the studio window. It's a complex fusion of art with family, landscape, and the material world. I think Chase was very much a student, you might say, of the light here on the East End. He was extraordinarily aware of the light at all times, and his painting is infused with that perception. We would welcome your visit when you're out on the East End of Long Island to come to the museum in Watermill, New York, just to the east of Southampton Village.
And that wraps it up for this edition of The Art Show. Until next time, I'm Rodney Veal, and thanks for watching.
Funding for the Art Show was made possible by Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, the Virginia W. Kettering Foundation, proud supporter of the arts in our community, Ohio Arts Council, Ohio Humanities Council, and viewers like you. Thank you.